Welcome back to Terran Urban Myths. If you are enjoying these chilling tales, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this episode a like.
Yeah.
Tonight we're delving into stories that explore a particularly unsettling theme, what we're calling the curse of the face.
Yeah, the human face. It's more than just a collection of features. It's the very center of our identity, our expression,
Ah,
our connection to the world.
right.
So when something disrupts that,
Yeah,
when the face becomes a site of fear or distortion,
yeah.
it cuts to the core of who we are.
Yeah, it's like a violation of something sacred, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And that's what makes these stories so unsettling. One that really got to me was about a guy named Campbell and this unspoken pact amongst his friends.
The story speaks to the power of social boundaries, the lines we draw, even without explicitly saying them.
Right.
Campbell had facial paralysis from an accident, and his friends, out of respect, never mentioned it. It was this unspoken agreement.
Yeah, until one night things went too far, fueled by alcohol. One friend crossed that line and made a cruel joke about Campbell's appearance, and the consequences were immediate and terrifying.
Wow.
The friend who made the joke suddenly developed facial paralysis himself, mirroring Campbell's condition.
Oh, that's fascinating. What's fascinating here is that the story doesn't explicitly say it was a supernatural curse.
Right.
It leaves us to wonder, was it a psychosomatic reaction, the friend's guilt manifesting physically, or was there something more, a darker force at play?
It's like that idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
The friend's fear and guilt actually brought about the very thing that he dreaded, and then to make things even creepier, Campbell vanished shortly after.
I don't know.
We're left to grapple with the implications. Was it guilt that drove him away, fear, or something more sinister?
It's a question that lingers, and it sets the stage for this recurring theme in these stories. The idea that our actions, particularly those related to disrespecting boundaries or mocking appearances, can have very real and sometimes terrifying consequences.
And this idea of consequences, it's not always limited to the individual. We have another story equally disturbing where a person's facial paralysis spreads to anyone who insults their appearance.
Oh, geez, this takes the concept of a curse to a whole new level. It becomes almost contagious, spreading through words, through these negative judgments about someone's physical self. But there's a fascinating twist. The curse can be broken if the person who made the insult offers a sincere apology.
So it's like the curse is testing people's hearts, their capacity for empathy and remorse. If they can genuinely acknowledge the harm they've caused, the paralysis recedes.
Right.
It makes you think about the power of words, how they can wound,
Yeah.
but also how a sincere apology can sometimes heal those wounds.
It raises the question, are these curses purely supernatural, or are they reflections of our own psychology, our anxieties about how we perceive and are perceived by others? Is it possible that our own beliefs and fears can shape the reality we experience?
That's a chilling thought. What if the power of suggestion, the fear of the curse itself, is what actually brings it about? That's the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night.
And it leads us to another unsettling theme that emerges from these stories, the idea of mimicry,
All right.
of entities or forces taking on familiar forms to deceive us.
This is where things get really creepy. We have a story about someone whose deceased cat seemingly returns exhibiting all the familiar behaviors.
Oh.
But something is terribly wrong. There's this sinister aura surrounding it, and this putrid stench, like the smell of death clinging to it.
It taps into a primal fear, the fear of the unknown disguised as something we love and trust.
Right.
Is this truly the returned pet or something mimicking its form, exploiting the owner's grief and longing for connection?
It's a betrayal on a deeply personal level,
Yeah.
and it raises questions about the nature of death itself.
Yeah.
If something can mimic a loved one so convincingly, what does that say about the boundaries between life and death,
Right.
between reality and illusion?
It makes you question everything you thought you knew about the world and the forces that might be operating just beyond our perception.
Speaking of things beyond our perception, one of the most disturbing stories we came across is about a young boy and his other brother. It starts innocently enough, it's constant presence that only he seems to see.
This speaks to the power of childhood imagination.
Yeah.
But also to the unsettling possibility that what we dismiss as imaginary might have a darker reality.
Right.
The boy accepts this other brother without question, but when he finally acknowledges him, the truth is horrifying.
Imagine instead of a harmless friend, he sees this grotesque two-faced entity.
Oh my God.
One face contorted in this horrifying grin, the other locked in a perpetual grimace of sorrow.
Wow.
And the sounds emanating from it are this chilling blend of laughter and sobs.
It's like a manifestation of pure, unadulterated terror, a being that embodies both joy and sorrow in the most disturbing way imaginable.
And then the boy's voice is abruptly cut off, leaving us to imagine his fate. It's a story that lingers long after you've heard it, making you question the nature of childhood fears and the things that we choose to ignore or explain away.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it, what truly lies beneath the surface of what we call reality?
Yeah.
Are there forces at play that we simply can't perceive? Or are these horrors just projections of our deepest fears and anxieties?
It's a question that haunts all of these stories. Take, for example, the one about the group of friends who had that unspoken rule about never mentioning Campbell's facial paralysis.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how even seemingly harmless actions can have these unintended consequences, particularly when we fail to respect boundaries, even unspoken ones.
Right.
This friend group had a delicate balance, a sense of camaraderie built on this foundation of respecting Campbell's sensitivity.
Right.
But one night, fueled by alcohol, one friend shattered that balance.
Yeah, he makes a careless joke about Campbell's appearance, and the impact is immediate. Campbell, deeply hurt, storms off, cuts off all contact with the group. And then the friend who made the joke experiences a chilling consequence. His own face becomes partially paralyzed.
Again, the story doesn't explicitly say it's a supernatural curse.
Right.
But the implication is clear. The friend's disrespect for Campbell, his disregard for the unspoken boundary, has come back to haunt him in this very physical way.
And it doesn't stop there.
Oh.
The story goes on to say that this paralysis spreads to anyone else who insults Campbell's appearance, but there's a catch.
Oh.
The curse can be broken if the person offers a sincere apology.
It's like a built-in moral test, isn't it? Those who can genuinely acknowledge the harm they've caused, who can muster true remorse, are spared the physical manifestation of the curse. It speaks to the power of accountability and the potential for redemption, even in the face of such unsettling events.
It makes you wonder if maybe these stories are trying to teach us something about ourselves,
Yeah.
about the power of our words and the importance of empathy.
Perhaps they're a reflection of our collective anxieties about how we treat each other,
Right.
how our actions can ripple outward and have unforeseen consequences.
And sometimes those consequences can be truly terrifying, like in the story about the owner whose deceased cat seemingly returns.
This one is particularly unsettling because it plays on our desire for connection. Especially in the face of loss, the owner is grieving, longing for the companionship of their beloved pet, and then seemingly out of nowhere it comes back.
But there's something off about this returned cat.
Right.
There's a sinister aura around it and this putrid stench, as if the essence of death is clinging to it.
It's a chilling reminder that not everything is as it seems, that even our deepest desires can be twisted and exploited. Imagine the psychological torment of this scenario.
Yeah.
You're yearning for comfort, for a sign that death isn't the end, and then you're confronted with this grotesque mockery of what you've lost.
It's the ultimate betrayal, and it taps into this primal fear of being deceived by something that should be familiar and comforting.
It makes you question the very nature of reality.
Yeah.
If something can mimic a loved one so convincingly, how can we be sure of anything we perceive?
Okay, this next one is about a strange emergency alert that goes out telling people to stay indoors, cover their windows, and absolutely not look at the sky.
It's a brilliant setup for a horror story, isn't it? The lack of information, the sense of impending doom. It taps into that primal fear of the unknown.
And of course, the protagonist can't resist looking. Who wouldn't? He goes to the window and sees these ominous dark clouds swirling and churning as if alive.
The clouds are described as moving with purpose, their formations shifting and changing in a way that suggests something massive and malevolent is stirring within them.
His initial reaction is to try and rationalize it.
Yeah.
He tries to convince himself it's just a strange weather phenomenon, but deep down, he knows something isn't right.
And then he gets a call from a friend who's
Yeah.
also experiencing the same unsettling events.
Yeah.
They try to make sense of it together, but their conversation is cut short when the friend decides to venture outside.
The protagonist hears his friend screaming in terror about something in the clouds, and then silence. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the things we dismiss as superstition or paranoia might actually be warning signs that we're on the verge of something truly terrifying.
makes you wonder what would have happened if the friend had just heeded the warning, if he had trusted his instincts and stayed inside.
Right. But that's the nature of fear, isn't it? It can paralyze us, or it can drive us to make these reckless decisions.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those decisions have consequences that reach far beyond the individual. We have another story that explores this idea, a family living in this isolated house. Their lives governed by this set of strange rules about this mysterious tree in their backyard.
The grandmother warns the children not to play around the tree, not to touch it, and especially not to swing from its branches.
Right.
It's clear that she believes the tree possesses this malevolent power.
Yeah.
Something capable of harming those who disrespect its boundaries.
But as kids often do, they're drawn to the forbidden.
Yeah.
The tree becomes this source of fascination, a challenge to their sense of adventure, and then we have the stepfather.
Right.
This skeptical and domineering figure who dismisses the grandmother's warnings as mere superstition.
He represents that all-too-human tendency to dismiss what we don't understand, to impose our own logic on the world, even when the signs are telling us to be cautious.
He decides to cut down the tree, convinced that he's liberating the family from irrational fear.
Oh.
But his actions have the opposite effect. They unleash this series of terrifying events that leave the family shattered and forever changed.
It's a classic cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes the wisdom of previous generations, the traditions and beliefs that seem outdated or irrational, might actually be protecting us from something truly dangerous.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it, that our attempts to control or dismiss the unknown can sometimes backfire in the most horrifying ways. And it leads us to our final story.
Okay.
A story about grief loss and the dangerous allure of what we desperately want to believe.
This one is about a woman grieving the loss of her husband.
Right.
She's struggling to cope with his absence.
Yeah.
The emptiness that lingers in their home. And then she starts to feel his presence. This comforting weight on the bed as she sleeps, the faint scent of his cologne.
It's like he's still there, watching over her, offering a sense of solace in her darkest hour.
Yeah.
It's exactly what she needs to believe, what her heart is yearning for.
Right.
But as the story unfolds, those comforting sensations take a sinister turn.
She discovers that the presence she feels isn't her husband, it's something else. Something mimicking his touch.
Right.
His scent exploiting her vulnerability and her longing for connection.
It's the ultimate betrayal. The very thing that offers her comfort, the belief that her husband is still with her, turns out to be this cruel trick, a manipulation designed to trap her in this cycle of grief and terror.
It serves as a warning to be cautious of what we choose to believe, especially when we're in a state of vulnerability. Grief can be a powerful force, and sometimes it can blind us to the dangers that lurk beneath the surface of what we perceive.
Well, there you have it. Another collection of chilling tales to keep you up at night. We've explored curses, the power of suggestion, the unsettling nature of mimicry, and the ways in which our own desires and fears can shape the reality we experience.
And as always, we encourage you to share your own thoughts and experiences in the comments. Have you encountered anything similar? Do you have a story that chills you to the bone? Let us know.
And if you enjoy these tales of terror and urban myths, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this episode a like. Until next time, sleep tight.